Good evening. Welcome to Larimer County. We have our new county manager candidates. On my right is Lorenda Volker. She's our Director of Human Services. On my left is Linda Hoffmann. She's the Director of Planning. And Commissioner Johnson will introduce them, tell you a little bit more about their backgrounds, but I did want to give you a chance to just meet these two ladies. I'll let you two go have a quick seat here. And then just tell you tonight is our chance to have a citizen meet and greet. So it's a chance for the community to get to know our two county manager finalists. One of these two wonderful young women will be one of our county managers. We have a process that Commissioner Johnson will introduce here in a moment, but this morning they met with the senior management team, had their interviews. Tonight is our citizen meet and greet. Tomorrow morning they're meeting with the elected officials to have that interview, and then the Board of County Commissioners will actually have the final interviews. I believe it's a week from Wednesday or a week from Thursday. And then we'll have our decision probably either that night or the next day. So to talk us through the next step is Commissioner Johnson. Steve?
Okay, thank you. For those of you in the audience, we'll have some index cards that Commissioner Gator and I will come around and collect those after the initial segment here. We also have some yellow comment cards that we'll be distributing in the audience because we're also interested in your opinion and your impression of the candidates as well. For those watching on TV, we have a phone number that you can call in questions. It's area code 970-498-7016. Now, if you're watching this show rebroadcast later on a later date, we will not be here. However, we have an email address that if you're watching this at a later date, you can send in email comments, and you can send email comments in this evening as well. And that address is countymanagerjob@larimer.org, and that's all one word, county manager job. So two ways that you, if you're at home, can submit questions or comments this evening as well, and I think both of those ways will be scrolling at the bottom of the screen. I have the pleasure of introducing the two candidates for county manager, and they are first Linda Hoffmann, the director of our county planning department, and second Lorenda Volker, the director of our human relations department. To begin, I'm going to ask them each two questions and give them about 6 minutes to answer those questions, if you would, please. And those questions are, number one, briefly, would you tell us about yourself and your background? And secondly, why do you want to be the Larimer County manager? And let's start with Linda Hoffmann.
So are you going to time me, Steve, like we do at land use hearings?
No. It's part of the test.
About 6 minutes.
Okay. My name is Linda Hoffmann, and I'm currently the Planning and Building Services Division Director, which is the group that does zoning and land use and building permits and code compliance and that kind of thing. I've only worked at the county about 4 years, 4.5 years, and I've been in the role as division head for about 2 years. Going way back, I was raised on a farm in Kansas, homesteaded land, so pretty deep roots there. But my parents always emphasized education, so the four of us went off to seek our fortune. And I spent most of my career in the private sector. My degree is in landscape architecture, but I really have not worked too much in that field. I worked primarily in the private sector for a civil engineering firm, and after 22 years had worked myself up in that firm to the position of a principal in the firm. So there were like maybe 14 of us, and we were the leadership team for a firm of about 500 civil engineers, surveyors, planners, construction managers, all kinds of folks like that. I also served as what we called a forum leader for sustainable design and for sustainability in general. So I had a role throughout the firm in helping us adopt that culturally, helping us expand our expertise and offer it to our clients. And so I did an awful lot of traveling in that role. So, and then I ran our Fort Collins office too. So I built that business unit, took over a small office and successfully managed that into a larger office that was financially successful. I came to the county 4 years ago, about 4.5 years ago, into the role of Rural Land Use Center Director. And I'm kind of one of those folks that I don't sit at my desk very well. it occurred to me that the walls of the county building can get awfully thick, and we just don't have enough contact with the public. So I took over a project for the county to update our horse regulations and worked on that with some of you in the room, some stars in the room who made that a successful project that really looked a fresh way at our land use regulations for that land use. I also worked on a regional food assessment, which took a little bit of county money and added it to a lot of other money in order to get a good handle regionally on what was happening from agriculture to processing, distribution, marketing, consumption, public health of our food system as a whole. And that became a regional project that I led, working with people from CSU in the room and also with folks from Boulder County and Weld counties. So as planning director, we've been doing quite a bit of work on our land use code. All of that has been pretty public and collaborative. So that's why so many of you in the room are familiar to you and to me, and I thank you for coming, and I hope we can answer your questions adequately tonight.
Lorenda?
Sure. I feel like I'm honored to be in such great company. It's really a pleasure to work with Linda, to work with the board, and to have the opportunity to even be considered for this position is really an honor. I've been happily married for over 23 years. I am the mother of 2 children. I have a 19-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son. So we're involved in the community and schools and those kinds of things. I earned a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in public education. And I'm proud to tell you that my work ethic is right in there. I got a 4.0 on my master's degree, and I did it while I was working full-time. So although my son learned to say his first words were, "I hate school," I think was his first full sentence because of the time I had to spend. I do feel that education is important, and so is kind of lifelong learning. I have certifications in my field. I have a FEMA certification. I worked many, many years in Florida, and that's sort of a mandate in Florida to have a FEMA certificate so that you can be involved in those emergencies. I've also been trained in interest-based bargaining techniques. I'm a certified bargainer, and so that was big part of my previous jobs. I've always been involved in professional and community organizations. I've been on the board of quite a few, and I've been president of several. To me, those are important things to do, both professionally for growth and personally to have a part in your community. I'm on a professional state board now. In fact, one of my favorite boards I volunteer on is a National Innovative Practices Award, which looks at new ways of doing things. Is there a better way? Are we doing it the best way we can? And we share those ideas on our website across the country. I have 20 years of government service experience. I started out in South Florida. I was an HR director, did all the typical things you would imagine an HR director would do. That city had 2 unions, so we bargained with those unions, and that was my job as well. But also, in addition to that, we did risk management, and I was in charge of purchasing and the print facilities. While there, the team elected me to be at the time, total quality management was a really big deal, and so they elected me to be the chair of the total quality management effort to improve citizen services. And so over time, we developed that project. I left there to go to the city of Ormond Beach, up the state a little bit in Florida, still in Florida. I worked there almost 15 years, enjoyed that very much, again in HR. While I was there, though, I also was assigned responsibility for public works, including fleet, solid waste recycling, emergency management for public works areas, so drainage, stormwater, those kinds of things. So that was a very interesting facet to what I was doing. And I learned a lot about operational departments, did that for some time, helped them with their budgeting, helped them set performance measures, many for the first time. And we also participated in a study with the Budget Advisory Board to see if we ought to perhaps maybe contract out fleet operations. And so that was a very big effort that we took on. And I think, those operational things helped me to develop my skills in other areas. I've been here, like Linda, about 4 years. We've been here roughly about the same time. I've been HR director for that period of time. I feel like HR is a partner with departments. We don't think of ourselves as barriers or bureaucrats, but I think human resources ought to be here to help us meet our needs and not get in the way of those needs, but do it in a fair way that's equitable and measured and those kinds of things. And so to that end, we've developed really good relationships with all the offices, all the departments. In HR, you touch a little bit of everything, and so there's some familiarity there with all the different functions across the county, and I think that will help if I'm selected to be the county manager. At the county, I think I'm most proud of some of the projects we've done that have crossed department lines, have affected more than just the HR department. We're replacing our payroll system, and that sounds like it benefits HR, but really we're doing it because we were asking people in the field to be pretty inefficient. They were entering time, doing lots of data entry, and this new system will free them up to meet the needs of their own businesses rather than spend time doing administrative work for us. We also instituted an employee wellness program and an employee clinic as cost containment measures for our self-insured benefit plan. And we're beginning to see a difference in that. We're beginning to affect chronic disease and costs associated with that. We also just recently completed a leadership development program, which was a collaborative partnership with the City of Fort Collins and the school district. Each of us chose 8 people to participate in the program, and they emerging leaders got skills on their leadership and how to work together and be better leaders. More importantly, though, and maybe a little more covertly, was the idea that these folks would end up working together collaboratively in the future as they assume their new leadership roles. So while they learned leadership skills, they worked on projects together and collaboratively that created those relationships, and I'm really proud of that. And lastly, the Innovation Awards program that we're just in the middle of celebrating, honoring and making part of the Larimer County culture, this idea that innovation is something that we do celebrate, that we do feel is important. We want them to look at new ways of doing things. We want them to challenge how we do it, why we do it, and can we do it better and cheaper and differently, and still provide excellent service to citizens. I am very proud to be part of Larimer County government. I'm really proud and pleased to have the opportunity to sit here and talk to you all tonight. And I just want to thank the board for selecting both of us.
Very good. Thank you both for your answers to those questions. At this point, I'll circulate around in the audience with some additional cards for your questions, if you have any. And at this point, I'll turn the program over to Commissioner Tom Donnelly.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Before we go on, I was going to acknowledge we have one VIP in the audience who hasn't been recognized. John Bauer from the Berthoud Town Board of Trustees is here with us, and we appreciate you coming out, John. Thanks a lot. The only elected official who's here with us this evening. Thanks, John. Now it's time for the candidates to answer your questions. So, if you have a question and you're in the audience there, Commissioner Johnson is out there with some white cards, and he's going to collect your questions. And then also we have some take-home or final cards, yellow cards that you can put what you think of this process and how you think everything, what you thought of the candidates, so you can fill those out. If you're at home tonight, you can call us 498-7016, and we have somebody that can screen your call and ask your question for you. Or you can email us at countymanagerjob, all one word, countymanagerjob@larimer.org, and Denny will read those out. You have a phone call already? Is that just sitting up there?
No, sir, I do not.
Oh. Okay, that's just a test. All right, so we've got some questions from the audience, and so we'll answer these, and we'll give you a few minutes here to answer each question. I think, did you begin, Linda? I think you did. So the first question will go to Lorenda. How long have you lived in Larimer County, and what is your involvement in the community?
Sure. So I've moved here 4 years ago, just about 4 years ago now, from Florida. Have never looked back. It is such a wonderful community. We appreciate everything about it, from the downtown in Fort Collins to the mountains to everything they have to offer down in Loveland. We are all over the county all the time. It's amazing to me how large the county is and how many things there are to do in the county. My involvement, for the most part right now, is through the schools. I have a 9-year-old son, and so that's where a lot of my personal time goes. But I've also been very involved in United Way, on a personal level and a professional level. And my thought was, early on, to really get to know the county and my professional organizations here in Colorado, and then develop those roots in the community around other kind of activities that are more civic related. But schools are very important, so we're pretty involved there.
Very good.
Two.
Yeah, go ahead, Linda.
I've been in Larimer County just over 12 years, and I'm a former member of the High Plains Environmental Center Board. I've served on committees for the United States Green Building Council local chapter, and I'm currently the staff liaison for two boards. One is the Agricultural Advisory Board, and previously I was the staff liaison for the Rural Land Use Advisory Board. Most of what I do in the community has to do with projects that I'm working on. There's a lot of outreach involved in those projects, and then my volunteer efforts are previous to joining the county, because I've kind of taken over this role of having more project-based input with the community. But that's fairly extensive through the two boards.
Very good. Before we ask the next question, I just offer a reminder to the audience. The county manager is responsible for administration and operations of the county. The Board of County Commissioners is really responsible for policy. So if you have a policy question about Middle Bald Mountain, for instance, it's probably more appropriate that you ask the Board of County Commissioners that question. And you know, we're always, we want to be available. We want to hear your concerns, and we want to answer you. So if I don't ask your question, if we're running low on time, I may not answer policy type questions, although I think it's kind of fun to put them on the spot a little and ask them something like that. But try to keep your questions to the kind of subjects that are appropriate for these candidates. Okay, so the next question. During your tenure with Larimer County, what is the single best thing and the single worst thing that has happened? And Linda, you're first.
Mine are going to be kind of the same answer. When I came into the director role for the Planning and Building Services Division, we were asked to cut the budget by a pretty notable amount. And the reason for that was our workload had gone down because we were doing fewer building permits, we were doing fewer staff reviews of applications. But sometimes a little application takes almost as much time as a big application. So staff still had plenty to do, but one of the things that had happened was, as my predecessor had experienced these cuts, they just plucked people off of the same org chart. And so we had situations where we had 3 people sitting side by side in cubicles, and each of them used to be part of a group that did a function, but then it was down to just one guy that did that function. And as you can imagine, that wasn't terribly efficient, because if we didn't have good backup, we didn't have a way of sharing workload. And so what I did working with my leaders in the division was we looked at really the services we needed to provide, and we figured out how to structure ourselves and organize ourselves such that we could do those services as efficiently as possible. And at the end of the day, it turned out that we could do that with 5 fewer positions. So the hard thing was saying goodbye to those long-term staff members, but the good thing was we became more efficient, we increased our customer service. I think staff is happier because at the same time we've been through a cultural change from looking at ourselves as a regulatory group to one that is very community building in our focus. And it's a lot more fun to help people than it is to say, well, gee, I don't really know if we can make that happen. So our staff is energized. We're doing lots more special project work like I was talking about earlier. But it was also very hard. So I've got one answer for the best and the worst.
Lorenda?
Sure. I guess my worst is along the lines of Linda's. It's not worst, it's sort of hardest. In 2010, we had to make quite a few budget cuts across the county, and we did a program to help people choose to leave and try to make that easier for them. But we lost a lot of good dedicated staff who were maybe ready to go on their own, or their department had identified their position as time to go. And going through that process, there were probably 35 to 40 employees that participated. It was not easy. Everyone had a different need, a different concern, a different issue, and we wanted to treat everyone with respect and all the things that they had earned from their time at the county. So although it wasn't the worst, in and of itself, that's not a bad thing, but the personal situation and the time that it took was probably one of the hardest things my department has had to tackle outside of changing out this payroll system. On the other end of the best, every time I get a report from our clinic and our wellness program, I am more and more excited about the difference we're making in the costs, the difference we're making in being able to contain those medical costs for our employees. I think that is one of the best things, one of the things I am the most proud of, is that we have this sort of innovative program we're looked to from other areas. People come and tour our clinic and want to see how we make it work. It is not a Cadillac plan by any stretch, but employees feel like it's valuable, and they use it, and it helps them manage those chronic conditions. So as a result, we saw employees who took a health risk assessment have their claims actually drop last year. Those who didn't saw their claims rise. And so we can see, we're beginning to see a correlation between that activity and those differences. And if we can control healthcare costs, that's one of the key tricks a lot of employers are trying to do without having to cut those benefits or change things for employees tremendously. I think that's a great thing, and so that's pretty exciting.
Very good. All right, next. Lorenda, you're first on this one. Are you lucky?
To be here, I'm very lucky. Yes, absolutely. I feel very fortunate, very lucky to be part of this process, to be working at Larimer County, to be living in Larimer County, to be having my kids go to the schools here. Yeah, I feel very lucky.
Ms. Hoffmann.
I'm very lucky.
Boy, everybody's lucky.
I think that's one of my favorite interview questions because it gives me the opportunity to just talk about all the great things that happened to me. But I am forced to note that old Chinese proverb that says the harder I work, the luckier I get. And I think that that's true for me. So I'm very lucky. I'm very fortunate. And I could just go on and on about all the ways that I could prove that. But I think you've heard enough.
Very good. Okay, Linda, this one's yours. If you had to describe yourself in one word, what would that word be?
Tenacious.
Very good. How come? Why? Maybe I should ask, and maybe there should be a Y on the end. Because you are. That's good enough. All right, go ahead. Lorenda, what's yours?
Problem solver. Is that one word?
It's sort of two, but that's okay. Okay. Lorenda, you're first on this question.
Okay.
How would you approach issues where planning or programming may be more effective if done with other partners in the region? And there's a long list here: Poudre School District, Loveland Schools, CSU, City of Fort Collins, City of Loveland, Weld and Boulder counties, and there's even more than that. So I think the issue is how would you approach collaborative issues?
I think we should collaborate whenever we can. We shouldn't reinvent that wheel, and people have done it differently, done it better. Maybe we all are doing it for the first time together. There's no reason we should all do it separately. The HR group met, I guess about a year and a half, 2 years ago. The managers of all the groups challenged us to try to find ways to collaborate, and we have kept up that effort. We meet quarterly with the school district. We've added the Water Authority. We've added the City of Loveland to that group as well. So we already share training programs. We already share lots of things. If all we share is information, we've come a long way. But if we can share services as well, I think that's a great thing to explore, if it makes sense.
Collaboration is one of those things, whereas Lorenda described, when I came into the role of planning director, I was surprised to learn that we were not meeting regularly with our colleagues from other communities. So I set up 2 networking groups, one with the planning directors from Boulder and Weld County, and a second one for all the planning directors within Larimer County. So now I go to coffee once a quarter with the planning director from Fort Collins and Loveland and Berthoud and Timnath, and Johnstown has trouble coming because that guy lives in Denver, but the point is we began to get together and talk to one another. So one thing I've done is collaboration among colleagues. I've also done collaboration. The example I'll use is the food study. We wanted to look at what happens in Larimer County with agricultural resources, and what does that mean to public health, and what happens in between those two things. So we began to talk about how to get that done, and it turned out that we needed money, and Larimer County didn't have any. And so I discovered that the state might be able to help fund that program if we could find regional partners. And at the time, I'll be candid, I was reaching out to regional partners because I needed money, and the way to get it was regional partners. But in the end, we did a project that looked at Boulder County, Weld County, Larimer County. We involved farm-to-school programs. We involved CSU as the researchers. The project is now getting national attention from the Center for Disease Control. And the way that we structured that project was CSU took care of the technical research, and I took care of the regional collaboration. So we did that in layers, working first at the staff level, then with a steering committee, a series of individual work teams from the 3 counties, and then overall public meetings. So I think regional collaboration can be kind of messy in that you have to get so many people involved, but thank gosh you get all these people involved and they come up with great things, and I feel like regional collaboration is something we need to do more and more of, and we can use that model for how to approach it.
Very good. Okay, next question. I think this is yours, Linda. What is your approach on handling the current and future budgets, especially in this negative economic environment?
I thought you were going to save the policy questions for the board.
I'm throwing those out there for you a little bit.
As we all know, Larimer County, with the failure of the sales tax initiative, is looking to cut about $10 million out of our general fund. And as a point of reference, our general fund is about $100 million. So almost all fourth graders now can do that math. So what the county has been working on is putting together what we're calling a playbook. So we're looking at all the things we could do to get to that $10 million cut. And the Board of County Commissioners met again today to take a look at that playbook, to take a look at whether the assumptions that went into projecting how much money to cut was appropriate, and verifying once again that this really is what we need to be planning for. Now, I need to stress that that $10 million cut won't happen all at once. It's a 3-year time horizon before the sales tax is stopped and we need to replace that money or do without that money. So the commissioners are looking at what they call a glide path, and that would mean that we would do some cuts up front. And of course, it's pretty simple economics from the way we all budget our groceries. If you still have money coming in and you spend less, then you have that increment to invest to make it easier to make the next level of cuts. The example I use when I explain it is, let's say that we wanted to spend a bunch of money on cars that get better gas mileage in order that we could save gas mileage on our fleet forever and ever, amen. Well, you have to have money in order to make that investment. So the board is very wisely looking at doing this glide path so that we cut before we have to, so that we have money that we can use to fund investments that might be needed to make additional cuts. So thankfully it's up to the board on the policy of what to cut, on the policy of how to set our priorities. And if I were selected as county manager, it would be my job to help them work through the SMT to develop those individual budgets to achieve those goals. And I'm sorry I talked so long, but it's a complicated issue. And I don't know how much background people have, so I hope I didn't bore anybody.
Go ahead, Lorenda.
Sure. It is a complicated issue. And to add to all the great things Linda said, there was a process in place that involved maybe some of you to provide feedback to kind of a really rough plan that the staff put together based on what they thought they could achieve over the next 3 years. And so There are several steps in place administratively just to help reach the place where we could get citizen input, where we could get input from the other elected officials so that the board can begin to have these kind of conversations, because it can't happen in a vacuum. It has to happen in the real world in real time with real economic situation. And that's why it is a playbook. That's why it isn't a 3-year budget. No one has a crystal ball and can see what's going to happen. The fact is we have to be ready for what does happen. And I think we're on the way. They had a great meeting today, a planning meeting to decide what to do next. And I think that the information that the board has got them ready to be able to have those talks. But they're going to be rough talks. They're going to be, people are going to, I think, be happy and unhappy. I think they're going to be both sides of that coin. And I think as manager, it would be important to help balance that, to help point out the pros and cons, to talk about the impact of the community, the impact of services, and to help them manage through the process.
Very good. Okay, before we go on, I'm just gonna tell the folks watching at home, if there is anybody actually watching at home, that you can call us at 498-7016. We have a screener. You don't have to talk live on the air, but you can call with your question, or you can email us at countymanagerjob@larimer.org. Countymanagerjob@larimer.org, and Denny will take that email and she'll read that question aloud. So if you want to do that, just a reminder that those options are available to you. Okay, Lorenda, you get the next question first.
Okay.
What is your favorite county open space?
Oh, Horsetooth Reservoir. My kids love the beach. They came from Florida and they miss it, and so to have a beach that they can play in is, we enjoy that very much.
Very good. Linda.
Well, I hope this doesn't say anything about my character, but I love Devil's Backbone.
Very good. We don't know what that means. Okay. Linda, you get to answer this one first. Urban areas have administrative units to represent their interests. The county is the representative governmental agency for agriculture. What do you think the major agricultural issues in the county are, and what is your position on them? Okay, so the major agricultural issues in the county, and what's your position on them? Linda, you're first.
Well, I saw some of my friends from that community come in. Obviously, number one on that list is water, and thankfully we got some rain today, but we can't count on that often enough. And so water is the major issue for agriculture. That certainly came out in the food study we did. The amount of irrigated acreage in the region, not just in Larimer County, is dropping, and it's dropping radically. And that's an issue for us. I think another issue that I know our farmers in Larimer County are struggling with are labor. And the availability of labor is something that is really more of a national issue. But as land use director, one of the things that we have been working on or trying to get more value-added agriculture provisions into our code. We worked on the horse study. We worked on all kinds of things that give our farmers additional options for their land in order to help supplement their income and open up new streams of income. So there are a lot of important agricultural issues, and I think for the urban population, agriculture can sometimes seem like it's something over there or out there that doesn't really touch our lives. But agriculture provides all kinds of benefits for the community. Not only is it an enormous economic engine, it also is quite a purveyor of open space and view vistas for us. It provides water quality benefits for us. Agricultural interests serve wildlife habitat needs, all kinds of spin-off benefits that our community realizes. So I think that the urban population needs to be more aware of our agricultural brethren, and the main issues that I see facing agriculture are the water, the labor, and the supplemental income to keep it economically viable.
Very good. Are we all done? Did everybody?
Lorenda didn't talk about ag.
Lorenda, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm just so surprised, actually.
this is certainly Linda's area, so I don't pretend to have all the details that she has about any sort of land use. But two of the things she hit on, I also have jotted down, and I know water is an issue. Water is always an issue. Water is an issue on my grandparents' farm back in North Carolina. Water is an issue here, as is labor. They're having a very hard time finding people to do the things that they need to meet the needs of the land. So on a very high level, and admittedly very superficial, those are the two that popped into my mind, was water and labor.
Very good. Usually the problem in Florida is too much water,
Yeah,
not enough water.
True.
So, hey, we actually have an email question, Denny. Is that true?
Yes.
Oh, Neil, you're going to read the question?
Yeah, I'm not Denny.
Okay, good.
The question is, what is your plan for managing the county departments more hands-on or hands-off?
Am I first?
Yeah, you're first, Lorenda. Go ahead.
My style is sort of respect the experts in their area. I am not an expert in law enforcement. I'm not an expert in land use. I'm not an expert in all of those things. There are people here who are experts in their areas. And so in terms of micromanaging, I don't micromanage. I'm not that kind of a manager. I believe in letting people do their job and sort of getting out of their way. But there are times when you have to pull people back or rein them in and say, you know, I think we're going in the wrong direction, provide a little guidance, and give direction. And I think that is the manager's role, is to hire the right people, let them do their job, and hold them accountable.
Very good. Linda, which one do you think?
This is a place where you're not going to see a lot of difference between the two of us. I think micromanaging is really counterproductive because it wastes two people's time. And so the way I like to manage groups is I like to firmly set a direction and make sure everybody is clear on where we're trying to go. And then let them figure out the how to get there. There's an acronym that I've used for lots of years. I didn't make it up. It came from the Levinson Institute, but they describe leadership in a LEAD. The L stands for leverage, which means leverage the expertise of your employees, don't micromanage. Engage, meaning give them something to get their teeth into, like we did in planning when we went from regulatory to community building. Align, make sure that we're all pulling the horses in the same direction. And D for develop. We have training budgets in the county, but at least in my division, we were not using those in a very strategic way. And so the kind of manager that I want to be is to look to the experts to do their expert work, but to set some framework for them so that we can all lead ourselves in the same direction.
Very good. Okay. This person writes, I understand if you are chosen for the position, there's a 6-month trial period. If you were to find that the job is not a good fit, how do you anticipate the move back to your current job? And maybe the other thing would be, what do you think would trigger your decision to not stay in the position if you were to receive the job? Linda?
Well, senior management team asked me this question this morning, and maybe I was a little too honest with my answer. I do not want to be in a position, in a role, that is not a good fit for me. I don't think that's good for the county. I don't think that's good for the community. And so I applaud the commissioner's wisdom in allowing this 6-month test drive, because neither Lorenda nor I have ever been a county manager before. The county board of commissioners and the elected officials as a whole have been working with the same guy for 18 years. I don't think any of us really knows how this is going to go. And so I don't want to shove a square peg into a round hole. And I think that the commissioners were wise to set this up as a test drive. And if it doesn't work, then I think we will go to Plan B. But I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I'd love to take the car for a spin.
Lorenda, go ahead.
Sure. I guess, first of all, one of the things I thought about a lot before I even applied was how would I take advantage of the 6 months? What is my intention? My intention, I think, is the same as Linda's, which is to succeed, to do a very good job, to be effective in that role, and to do the things the county needs. But I think if there's a sense that I'm not doing that, if there's a sense from the board, from myself, from the senior management team, from the other electeds, it would cause me to question that. And I think I would explore that with the board and the others to see how they were feeling. If I felt I wasn't going to help the county and lead the county forward, I wouldn't want to stay in the chair. I believe in the county. I'm proud of working for the county. I think the county does amazing things. And if I thought I would be a detriment to that, I would step down in a second.
Very good. Well, you both do an excellent job in your current jobs, and so if the one of you that is chosen, if you would not want to remain in that job, we certainly would like to keep you here in Larimer County. So we actually have a phone call.
We do.
Annie, go ahead.
Ted in Fort Collins wants to know, do you think reorganization is needed at the county? I don't know specifically what reorganization, but that was the question.
My first?
I think you're first,
I am.
Linda. Go ahead.
I think like any new leader, you don't come in and you don't just shake the boat up and turn it upside down. I think you look and see what's working, and you do that over time. And so it's possible that over time things might get reorganized, but it wouldn't be my plan to walk in and reorganize. I think that we have a very strong team. I think that we have all the people in place to meet the needs of the budget and the other concerns that are coming forward. How we do it may be slightly different. If I'm manager, then maybe Frank Lancaster would have done it, or how Linda might do it. And that's where sort of style comes in. But in terms of the team and the organization, I don't think I would come in and just sort of turn things upside down and shake them up.
Good. Ms. Hoffmann.
The most important thing in any organization is not the org chart, but it's the direction that you're headed. And in the case of Larimer County as a community, if I come into the role as county manager, I'm going to work very hard to understand what the vision for the community is from the county commissioners and from all of the elected officials. And if there's something in that vision that looks like it could be better supported by a different organizational chart for the government organization, then that would be the time to look at a reorganization. Shuffling the chart just in order to move the boxes around isn't a worthwhile exercise. But if there is something that we can do to better structure the government to support the community, then that's when we should reorganize.
Very good. Okay. Who would win a fight, Hulk or Batman? Let's throw that one out. Okay. Real question. How would you feel about open space being leased to farmers? And how about hunting on open spaces? I'll add that myself. So how would you feel about open space being used, leased to farmers? And how do you feel about hunting permits being issued on some of our open spaces?
Open space in Larimer County it's my turn.
Yeah, you're right. You're first.
Some open space in Larimer County is leased to farmers, and that's important. Some of the open space that is owned by the city of Fort Collins is leased to farmers as well. In Boulder County, we learned in the food study, the biggest landowner is the public, and they lease an awful lot of land to farmers. And there are pros and cons about that. I see my farm friends smiling. But in Larimer County, one of the things that we will need to look at as the open space tax comes up for renewal or potential renewal is the open space folks are already working with various groups and have approached the Agricultural Advisory Board about this issue of whether or not that question should be put to the voters the next time around. If we want to see more of our open space dollars go to productive farmlands that are perhaps the irrigated higher dollar crop lands, as opposed to the propensity of rangeland that we bought last time around. So I think that that's a really good question in that it's very timely and something that our community will be looking at in the next couple of years.
Very good. Lorenda.
Yeah, I think this probably falls in that policy issue question. This is not something the manager is going to have control over, but the process around discovering what to do and making recommendations is. And I think you do that by being informed. You do ask those questions. You do get groups together. You get input, and you let the board hear that input, and then they can make a more informed decision. So whatever my personal opinion was on it wouldn't really matter because I wouldn't be a decision maker. I would have to get your personal opinion of others before we go forward with anything like that.
Very good. Okay, we still have time for a few more questions. So, Lorenda, you're first on this next question. Could you share your management leadership style and why it would be a good match for this county manager role?
Sure.
Good one.
I think of myself as participatory. I don't like to dictate answers. I like people to come up with their own solutions. I'm happy to be a sounding board. I'd love to do that. I like people to disagree with me. I think that in terms of managing with the board, it's my job to disagree with the board from time to time. We may do it in private. We may challenge each other, but once the board makes a decision, the manager has to walk out and stand with them. And so just like I owe them my best advice if I was the manager, I think that staff owes me their best advice. And so I would want to create an environment where they felt they could give that. They felt they would feel free and safe to be able to disagree and challenge. But in the end, just like with the board, when a decision gets made, we have to walk together and follow that decision. So, I think I'm trustworthy and ethical and all of those things. But in terms of management style, I think I'm participatory and more facilitative than I am more dictatorial.
One of the things we've been working on planning is being, I guess, a little more intentional in our decision making, because sometimes when you're making a complicated decision, you just kind of launch into the process. And if you just look at three decision-making styles between autocratic, one guy decides, collaborative, everybody inputs, and if you come to agreement, great, but if you can't, then one guy decides. And the third is consensus, where you just talk about it until you get there for an answer. And I really favor that center one, the collaborative style. And for most decisions, that's where I like to be. But I think sometimes at the county, I've seen us just beat a dead horse too long. And I think that sometimes some smaller things, maybe we can just decide and move on. On the other hand, I think sometimes we will enter into a collaborative process without being clear that we're being collaborative, and people have expectations that we're gonna keep working at this until we get consensus. And in some issues that's important, but in other issues it's just not worth the time that it takes to do that. So I will stand firmly in collaborative style as often as I possibly can, but there are going to be some issues that are important enough that we'll need consensus, and others that just aren't worth it, and we'll decide and move on. But Lorenda's point that for the most part, the county manager is an implementer. We're a facilitator, and the big decisions rest with the board and the elected officials.
Very good.
So I'm going to be making a decision about where to go to lunch, that level on the autocratic.
It's better to always be dictatorial when you're dealing with the board, but that's from experience. So, Linda, you're first on this question. Your thoughts on jail, alternative sentencing, the DA's office, et cetera, and the funding for those different departments in our public safety functions, the county.
Well, I wish I knew more about that whole part of Larimer County government. It's one of the biggest slices of the pie in terms of where we spend our tax dollars. And it's certainly important. The most important rating always among the end results that the county produces are public safety, and those are the services that provide that. So I know that Larimer County has done an amazing job, a leader in the state and beyond, in the way that we have made efficient use of our jail space by keeping the lesser offenders into either alternative sentencing models or into community correction models. And that's really good for the taxpayers, because those jail beds cost so much more per night than either of those other two models. But I think the question was, what do we do moving forward? And I think that we're going to have to look to the experts in those fields to guide us. We'll have to look to the board for policy direction on how much Larimer County thinks we can afford to spend on those services. And my role will be as the coordinator between that. The board will set the policy direction, and I will work with the leaders in that part of our structure to try to make the best use of the funds available. And I think that will be hard because we have already done so much to reduce our costs and make efficient use of the jail we have.
Okay, Lorenda,
Sure.
go ahead.
I think that the board has made investments in the right places where this goes. Alternative sentencing beds are significantly cheaper than jail beds, and most of the time it's an option. But jail services are mandated. We don't have an option about having a jail, and so that's an issue that's going to keep looming there forever. I guess Linda's right. It is a policy question. You know, how do we do this? How do we meet the needs that we're required to meet, and how do we do it in the most cost-effective manner? And how do we challenge folks who work in those areas to think about things differently? One of our innovation awards is from a woman who works at the jail, and she came up with a creative way to provide inmate medication. And it's just a matter of collaborating with another agency. And when you look at it, you think, wow, that's crystal clear. But for a long time, we didn't look at things that way. And so I guess encouraging that sort of thing is going to help a little bit. It's not going to solve the problem, but it may help us get a little closer to it. Ultimately, it is going to be a lot of talks, a lot of discussions with the sheriff and the DA and others about what is the right thing, what is the right ratio, what is the right number, what's the safest way to do it, especially at the jail. We're concerned about both inmate safety and officer safety. So those are all things that have to come into play, and I think I'm not an expert in any of that. I know a little bit about it, having worked with the sheriff on other issues and other things at the jail, but I do not pretend to be an expert in all of those public safety type issues, and I think you bring those experts in a room and you talk about what the impacts are of these changes, not the gloom and doom, the sky is falling, but what are the real impacts? What are the things, what do we think is achievable? What do we think we can expect? What are the trends? What are other places doing? Let's look at some others that have succeeded in other ways. And as manager, I think it's your job to open your mind and think, how else might we get there?
Okay, short answers on these next couple questions. Short answers, and then we're going to give you a minute to wrap up and say your final thoughts. Have either of you personally or with your children, do you have any experience with 4-H? Lorenda?
No.
Linda?
Yes.
Oh.
4-H family, 1983, state of Kansas.
Oh. You're dating yourself. Okay.
Sorry.
This writer asserts that certain county departments operate with little oversight and an ineffective grievance process. Would you listen to citizens' concerns? And would you try to, provide greater oversight and more effective grievance processes?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, that's about as short as I can get, and I don't mean to be flippant about it.
No, I know.
Land use and planning are emotional issues.
But make it short.
And so we have developed processes in that arena to talk with people in an effective way.
Yeah, Lorenda.
Yeah, I think, of course, you listen to what citizens are concerned about, and then you decide what you need to do, what can be done, what should be done about that.
So there's still about 15 questions here that weren't answered, and I apologize for that. But let's give each candidate about a minute to make any closing remarks they'd like to make, and then we're gonna go ahead. So who's first? I can't remember.
I had to start with the opening.
Okay, Lorenda, why don't you start then?
And she's prepared.
Very good. Okay, nice. Very brief.
Yeah, I guess I'm proud to be here. I said that before, but this is a great place to live and work. I'm just very proud to be part of this process. Everyone knows we have challenges ahead of us, the budget being the largest, but not the only one. I like to solve problems. I think that my collaborative style helps with that. And I have tremendous faith in the team that we have here. We've worked together. We met to even come up with a draft budget plan, and I think that's a good, strong group, and if we can lean on them, rely on them, and push them to be more involved and do more, I think that will help. This next step of being county manager, I think, is a logical progression in my career based on what I've done up until now. I've got exposure to operating departments, and I've got exposure to all the county departments just in my job as an HR person. So I look forward to the chance. I think I can do a good job. I've been given a chance in my career to lead and succeed in other areas, and the idea that I could have this opportunity in this organization is very, very exciting to me, because it's not something that happens every day. I treasure this opportunity, just being a part of the process. It truly is an honor just to be nominated, as they say. And I just want to thank the board for your confidence in the both of us, to have us here, that you think you see something in us that you believe can succeed in this position. And I hope I get the chance.
Ms. Hoffmann.
I want to begin by thanking you again for coming tonight. I know that there were probably things that were pressing in your personal calendars that you could have come instead, but thank you for making this investment in Larimer County. I too want to thank the board for getting shortlisted, and I'm honored to be shortlisted with Lorenda. I said in the paper, and I'll say again, this is a win-win situation for me. I'm either going to get an exciting new challenge or a boss that I already respect. So that's a great position to be in. When you're in a position like this, when you have the opportunity to apply for a job, it's tempting to think about the things that you have that apply just to this and try to tweak your resume to say that you're the right one. And because I don't do a resume very often, I went back to the one that I did 4 years ago when I applied for the Rural Land Use Center Director. And under the Other Skills and Abilities section, I said that I was collaborative, solution-oriented, and creative. And I think that some of what I've done with the community, some of what I've done internal to the organization, within the division, and with other county-wide groups within the county, has really proven that to be true. And I believe that as a county manager, 3 important attributes would be to be collaborative, solution-oriented, and creative. So this is a position that I'm very interested in. I'm very honored to have the opportunity to apply and to talk with you tonight and others about it. And I just think Larimer County is the kind of amazing place that needs amazing leadership. And with the commissioners we have, with the other elected officials that they collaborate with, setting the vision for where the community is going is really the right thing for all of us. And to have the opportunity to implement that division or help to implement that division in the county manager role would just be a dream come true for me. So thank you for letting me have a shot at it, and thank you for coming tonight, and I hope I get to chat with some of you after we break up.
Yeah, well, certainly it appears to me that Larimer County will be the winner, no matter which one of you earns this job. Now, one thing is that too often these meetings, there's no one in the audience when this board meets, and so I really appreciate the folks from the community that have shown up here tonight, because this is really this is an important decision. It's an important aspect of your local government, so we do really appreciate you coming out, and you make a lot of difference, and this has been, I think, a very informative and really good process. So thank you a lot for coming. Now, to wrap it up and close it out, is the chairman of the board, Commissioner Lugater.
Thank you, Commissioner Donnelly, and thank you, Directors Hoffmann and Volker. Thanks again to everybody for being here. You can get your comments to us, to the Board of County Commissioners, by next Wednesday at Larimer, County Manager Job at larimer.org. And also, we will be replaying this on our website. You'll be able to go to larimer.org and get this. And then your local cable channel will also be replaying this multiple times throughout the next week. Thank you again very much for joining the Larimer County Board of County Commissioners and our county manager applicants. And that's the end of our program for tonight.